Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Hope you are staying warm. Welcome to another edition of Coast to Coast College Football Pregame Show. I'm your host, Uncle Shally. Call me Bill Shawcross. As always, my two main men are with me this morning. My Buckeye brother from another mother, Mr. Cottrell Simpson. How are you, sir?
Feeling pretty good, Ohio State's making a splash, and they're making this offseason count. So I'm pretty happy.
They are setting their expectations very high this year. So you have to give the Buckeyes credit. We will get into that shortly, though. And as always, Mr. West Coast himself, Mr. 3 hours behind, Mr. I Black, Mr. Alex Elmore. How are you, sir?
I'm a lot more awake today. I've been up since 3 a.m. staring at the clock, counting down the hours to my Niners play tonight and demolish that Green Bay pack cheese heads tonight. But other than that, I'm great. Excited to have one last episode on the season. Give a quick little shortcut and introduction to the off season and what to expect coming up. And I appreciate you guys having me as always, and can't wait to get started.
Yep, as Alex just mentioned, this is kind of our fall our fall season finale. We will be on a little bit of a break, and we'll be back. Probably around April-ish. We will come back and we'll do some draft stuff, and then we'll pop in here or there. Obviously, if something huge happens, we have the ability to pop on and always do a little show. But kind of like a network show. It's kind of our fall finale. We'll be back in the spring, going full bore again. So, but we're gonna do our last show here. We're gonna have a little bit of fun. We're gonna talk about the portal because it's still going nuts, and it's still gonna be going nuts after the show. But we're gonna do some portal talk. We're gonna talk about what you think the better job is, and that will probably spark some interesting conversations because I know for a fact me and Cottrell kind of view college programs very closely. I'm very curious to see where Alex fits in here, in regards to the tiers of college football. So we're going to talk about that stuff. Like I said, we're talking about the portal. We're going to talk about kind of how out of control the portal is and maybe changes they need to make. Not saying that anybody's doing anything wrong. I'm just saying in general, the state of college football type thing, something like that. But, we're going to get started here and we're going to go through it and have some fun. And then we will unfortunately, bid farewell adieu at the end, but it'll be April before you know it. Soon as the snow melts, even though I got another 6 inches of it this yesterday afternoon. So I don't know where it is where you guys are, but the weather here is really starting to piss me off. I need spring. So let's get cooking here. Obviously, we'll start with one of the big names that kind of came out of nowhere. Cottrell has talked about this kid numerous times. He is one of the most highly rated quarterback prospects in the last 10 years by some scouting outlets. He's been rated higher than Archie Manning, just to give you kind of a framework of where he is. Mr. Julian, he decommitted from Alabama yesterday. I think a lot of people thought he was going to stay. There wasn't any rumblings of it, which, I think for a kid of that high caliber, for it to kind of come out of nowhere was interesting. But Alabama loses another kid. I think they're up to like 10. And out of those 10, there's 5 or 6 5-stars since Kellen DeBoer was named head coach and Nick Saban retired. Cottrell, let you go first. What do you think this is a sign of for Alabama first and foremost? Because obviously we are not used to seeing this with Nick Saban there. And B, where do you think Julian lands?
So I think this is something that this will either be the best thing that has happened to Kalen DeBoer, or this is going to go down as a disaster. And I say that because Julian just didn't end up, going into the portal because of like just a random thing, not feeling like he meshed well with DeBoer. DeBoer had Julian saying there, and he still went out and honored his commitment to his, kid who originally committed to Washington. And he said, you know what? I know I left Washington, but I'm going to honor your commitment here. We still want you to come to campus. And that made enough of an impact on Julian saying to, go out and say, hey, I'm going to go hit the portal. I could play with anybody in the country. Like, I'm the best quarterback prospect in the country, in my opinion. So I think that it's very telling that the amount of talent that DeBoer has, he's willing to let that walk out the door to still bring in his guys who he feel like fits what he wants to do and how he wants to play. I think that can like I said, I think that's going to go either one of two ways for him. I think you may still have that success because you get guys that are bought into, your play style and that attitude that you want to have. But I also think it may become an issue because you're going to be in that SEC where a lot of teams are going to have just flat out better players. You can't recruit Alabama how you recruited at Washington because there's going to be games where the better horses are just going to flat out go win. So I think with DeBoer, he's going to have to find a common middle ground with Saban and just with the rest of his coaching staff about how they go about recruiting and how they go forward with bringing in some of those names. And then as far as Julian goes, it's crazy because I really thought Ohio State would not be in the sweepstakes for him. They signed Aaron Nolan in this previous class. Obviously, Will's still going to be the projected starter this year, and you got Devin Brown, who was a former 5-star. I really think Julian Saint is going to end up being a Buckeye. I think this kind of is telling me, essentially, for Ohio State at least, that their chips are all in. Ryan Day doesn't have any more room for error. They said, we're going to spend as much money as we need to. We'll bring you all the best players that we feel like are in positions of need. We'll spend money on the coaching staff. You want to go get an NFL guy to be your play caller? We'll go get Bill O'Brien. He has that experience there. We're not giving you any other excuses. We need you to make some noise this year because we're pulling out all the stops. So I think this is a move. You heard last year, we were talking about Eli Ricks. They didn't want to bring in that competition to, be in that same room with some of those Ohio State DBs. Them going out, already having a top 5 kid who was the runner-up at an Elite 11 camp on the roster, and Aaron Nolan, going to get the guy who beat him and, just pretty much saying, screw Aaron Nolan's feelings. We're here to gather as much talent as possible. I think it's pretty telling of the sense of urgency for this Ohio State team.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great talent. I mean, 5-star kid. Obviously, he's someone that we've mentioned multiple times on the show about, Alabama and the direction that they're going. He was always mentioned in the bright future Alabama had moving forward. So him hitting the portal, it's obviously a huge blow. Kalen DeBoer saying in the press earlier that he's not too shocked by all this mass exodus that's happening at Alabama. And to me, I think that's BS. But how could you not be worried when all the talent, like guys like Cyan and Downs are leaving your program for possibly greener pastures? I don't know how you can replace that talent level, but I digress. Cottrell, obviously Ohio State is the front runner to land him as their QB. Now, if I'm looking at a dark horse that I think would be an ideal fit for his, for what his capabilities are, and I think it would be a great fit for college football in general, is I would love to see him go to Clemson. I would love to see him go in, sit behind Cade Klubnik for a year. Not that he may or may not be better. Obviously that's debatable, and we haven't seen him in college action yet. However, Clemson is in need of QB depth and talent, and I think that's a situation where he can walk in. Clemson's still getting 4- and 5-star recruits yearly. He's still going to have that talent level that he needs, but Clemson doesn't have anybody in their future as far as quarterbacks go that can keep them kind of contending in the ACC now that Florida State's really kind of stepping up their recruiting and getting some big names. Clemson's got to do something to kind of keep up with Florida State, and I think this is the exact type of transfer that they could use to really boost up the morale and confidence of the program. It's unfortunate that Dabo does not like to use the portal because there's so many key pieces out there just waiting to be swooped up. He's a fool for not. And also, I think it's going to cost him his job if he doesn't kind of get with today's program.
Absolutely no way Dabo hits the portal and goes after the best portal prospect ever. Like, that's just so against Dabo. I think that guy's so stuck in his ways.
But if he were to, this would be the one he should do it on. Like, he's got nobody behind Klubnik. He's got 2 3-star guys that are not going to be able to compete at high levels that you need even to make even to make an extended college football playoff field, he needs somebody that's a playmaker that's going to make a splash. And if he was ever to finally kind of pop his cherry and use the transfer portal, this would be the kid to do it on.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying Dabo is the definition of stuck in his ways. Like, I don't know if that guy will change for anybody. They could have Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, you name any successful Clemson player in the past, that caliber talent could be in the portal, and I don't think Dabo pulls the trigger on any of them.
I agree with Cottrell. Dabo, I actually think Dabo's on his way out as well. I think you're kind of starting to see the passing of the torch a little bit of the ACC kind of starting to skew back towards Florida State, which is ironic because Florida State's trying to get out of the ACC. But that being said, I mean, I think it's down. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm actually going to say something a little crazy. I won't be surprised if he ends up at Ohio State. For all the reasons Cottrell said, I think, this will probably never be made public. But I think Ryan Day had conversations with certain people in that school, and they were like you're kind of like Cottrell said, like, you got a year to make some noise here, or maybe we really do need to start making look at making a change. I've read a couple things already that Saban's going to kind of get involved here. I think there's a better chance that I'll give it like a 25-30% chance that he actually ends up back up at Alabama. I think a lot of people are in the impression that Nick is leaving the program and he's not going to be around, but they gave him a brand new office in the football building, and a lot of other things. They already said that he's kind of getting involved with trying to keep some of these kids here and trying to tell kids like the end of the world's not happening, like don't just jump ship and do this and do that. So obviously I think Ohio State, I don't think you can count out Georgia. Georgia is the one really top 5-6 power school that doesn't have a huge name quarterback wise for next year's cycle. They have a 4-star kid coming in, but again, not an Elite 11 kid. Not an Aaron Nolan, Jordan Davis, not no type kid like that. So I think Kirby will push hard to try to close this before maybe Ohio State can. Ultimately, I think it comes down to those two, or he returns back to Alabama. He's going to be a big get for somebody. He's either going to be a big get to stay in Tuscaloosa, or he is going to be a huge get for Athens or Columbus. There will be other chips to fall there. Obviously, if he goes to Columbus, Cottrell could comment on it more than me. I don't think Aaron Nolan stays there.
No way.
I mean, he will be. This is kind of like the coaching thing. If he goes there, I think Aaron Nolan hits the portal immediately, because that kid is a kid that can go start somewhere next year. So it's going to be interesting. Like you said, we're going to get into it a little bit more just in general. But that was the big name that came out of nowhere yesterday. So we could not talk about Julian Sands. So.
I think the one place who I think could potentially sneakily pull him away, surprisingly, would be the school where his head coach came from, and that's Washington. Jedd Fisch was big on his recruitment when he came out of high school. Arizona offered him. I think that's a spot where they don't have a set in stone starting quarterback for next year or even in the years coming up. So we've already heard that Arizona's quarterback doesn't plan on hitting the portal. So, I think that could be a match that potentially made in heaven. The spot opens up clear as day for you. You go there, you be your starter for a coach that you're familiar with that offered you. I think that could potentially be a spot as well.
I would only be a little
Will
shocked
Rogers had an interview. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just saying, I would only be shocked if he went there, because that program is going to be in a rebuild for the next year or two. They already lost a lot. They're the one, what they lost when Kalen left. That, he could just be like, hey, I'm going to be a freshman and take my licks and, grow with the team. But I would say they're probably 4th or 5th down the pecking line, in my opinion.
And what I was going to say is that Will Rogers did have an exit meeting, or a meeting with Jedd Fisch, and it actually is looking like he will actually be staying at the University of Washington. It has not been officially announced, but they say that sources close to him do say that he is leaning towards staying in Washington. So they may actually have a quarterback for next year, just not quite official yet.
Well, that would be another interesting development.
Other thing too, I just want to put this on record because we're here and he hasn't played a snap yet. Julian Sang is going to be a future first round, first pick in the NFL draft. 3 years from now, regardless of where he goes, he's going to be the first pick in either 27, 28. Whenever he decides to come out, he's going to be the first pick in that draft. He's that good.
Guess we'll find out.
We shall. You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
I feel more strongly about him than I do of Raiola, and everybody knows how I feel about Raiola.
I'm not a Raiola guy, so I
know.
haven't been a Raiola guy since we got into that whole class cycle with all the Elite 11s. I think everybody in that Elite 11 camp is probably going to be better than him. I am not. Him going to Nebraska told me a lot, and people could take that as a slight as they want, but it is. I think he's a very specific type of kid where I don't think he wants, I don't think he wants the limelight per se of a Columbus or Michigan or an Alabama. I think he'll be that hero type kid on Nebraska because he decided to go there, and everybody in Nebraska will love him no matter what because he decided to go there. And I don't know how much of a big time player he is. I really don't. We're going to see. We're going to see real quick because I don't think there's any way in the world he doesn't start for them, in 2024. So, it's not even just a personality thing for me. I just watch his tape and compare it to guys like Aaron Nolan and Jordan Davis. He just doesn't pop. A lot of people tell me I'm crazy, but I think if you gave to prop up certain parts of his tape against the other top 4 or 5 guys in that class, I think a lot of people would tell you the same thing. I just think he's been at the top of that class for so long because he's kind of one of those prodigy kids that he gets the benefit of the doubt for everything. And I'm not sold on Raiola at all, and I've been on record with that. Could be wrong. Could have egg on my face, and I'll gladly admit it if I am. But I have my doubts there. Anybody else we would like to talk about in the portal before we move on?
Let me see. I'm kind of checking the top some names in the portal right now. Caleb Downs.
I was going to say,
what do you guys think about Caleb Downs?
All Alabama.
If you look at the top 10, 6 of the top 10 are Alabama and Washington players, obviously, which is to be expected with the late retire and the late hire of Kalen DeBoer. Obviously, that's to be expected with the talent that both teams had. So it'd be really interesting. A lot of the talent that's still in the portal, that's the shoe needs to drop on still is really defensive players like safety Caleb Downs. We're still waiting on Jabbar Muhammad, the cornerback from Washington, to decide his final stop. So there's a couple really big key defensive players out there that can really make a difference in someone's back end. So where they decide is really going to change the landscape of college football next year. So those are really 2 really big names. So God forbid one school lands both of those. That's a really big game changer. So those are the 2 of the names that I'm looking for. Obviously, those are 2 of the names on a lot of people's lists, but they are on those lists for a good reason.
And I think Jabbar, with Jabbar Muhammad, clearly, I feel like I talked about him every week from like week 5 till now, because every time I saw him on field, had no clue who he was going into the season. But every time I watched Washington play, he was the one that always stuck out to me on film. And then as far as Caleb Downs goes, Caleb Downs is a kid that's special. I think he's a future NFL All-Pro. Ultimately, I think Caleb Downs ends up going to Georgia. It's going to go down between Georgia or Ohio State. I truly think his DB coach getting a job as Georgia's defensive coordinator will be the piece that sways him. But I will say the longer that this gets drawn out, I think the better it is for Ohio State's favor, just because everyone was really already expecting, at least here, in Columbus, expecting Caleb Downs to commit to Georgia because of, that familiarity there and what they had going on. So the longer that this goes on, just gives Ryan Day and company, more chances to go down. They've already gone on a visit for like once already, but that gives them more opportunity to, continue to build that relationship with him. They came in second the first time around, through his high school recruitment. So I'm definitely hoping that they land him, but I also think he goes to Georgia. And then Jabbar Muhammad, I think Texas gets, the rich get richer there. I think he ends up going there, being their starting outside corner, and you know, having a lot of success there as well.
Those are
Yeah, I
two
mean,
big names that
obviously,
fall.
Oregon is still in the running for him, so don't count us out just yet for Muhammad.
It makes sense. No, Oregon definitely makes sense. I definitely thought Oregon would be right there in the running, but I'm surprised Texas is the school. I thought Bama could be there too. Sounds like he's pushed them to the side.
I mean, it's tough with all these because you really don't know who is meeting with him, who's not, and then it's you have 8 million people projecting him, and then he's projected to 6 different schools, and then you'll have one guy come out and be like, oh, I know for sure he's going to like so and so, and then you hear the kid come out and be like, yeah, I didn't even talk to them. So it's always it's crazy. I feel like when guys hit the portal and they get linked to somebody immediately, and then everybody agrees, those are the ones they usually get right. I feel like the two guys we just talked about, like Bond and Muhammad, like the longer it goes, that is when you like sometimes get a team that like nobody mentions come out of nowhere, and they're like, oh yeah, like, well, we met with them like the second day and nobody knew about it, and we really liked them, and that's where we're going to go. So I do think the longer it goes, the more interesting it gets. And obviously you still got head coaches, that are kind of shuffling and possibly going or possibly coming. So I mean, there's a lot of there's just so much going on. I really wish they would just set timetables for this stuff, and not make it be as chaotic as it is. But we'll get into that shortly. But kind of a segue into the coaches. We had the big shoe and the big foot drop with Saban leaving. And obviously, they hired Kellen DeBoer. Now, I thought Jed Fish made perfect sense to go to Arizona, Washington. Hate to say it, Arizona is just kind of a, going up Schitt's Creek without a paddle with what's left of the Big 12, and I mean that conference just isn't going to be taken real seriously. I think it's for what he's done with that Arizona program, to turn them around in 2 years and have the opportunity to go to Washington as they're joining the Big Ten. I thought it made too much sense, and that's why I predicted him to go, especially coming off the year that he had. He had a lot of momentum. The shocking part to me was that he wasn't taking his quarterback and that wide receiver, that dynamic duo with them together. They are best friends. They both grew up together, and apparently they said, they want to stay home and stay at Arizona because that's where they committed. I give those kids all the credit in the world for falling back on that principle and be like, this is where we commit to play football, and this is where we're going to stay and play football. I love that. But he went to Washington now, so they have a head coach going into the Big Ten. Arizona I don't believe Arizona's hired anybody yet, have they not?
They have Brent Brennan from San Jose State.
That's right. I did see that. So, I mean, I think, not that San Jose State is anything to scoff at, but I mean, they'll probably either fill the job from within or get somebody else. The coaching stuff has finally calmed down. The last big thing, obviously, is what's going to happen with Harbaugh. And I think kind of, to go back on the timeline of the other things, I think the longer that draws out, the more likely it is he stays in Michigan. Chargers, I feel like we're given a 48-hour timeline, and they didn't offer the job, and they keep interviewing people. So I'm not saying he's not going to go there, but I think every day that passes by, it's more likely that he is staying in that he's going to stay in Ann Arbor. He had a press conference yesterday, at a big charity thing that he does every year, and he didn't directly come out and say it, but they asked him, and he blatantly started talking about Team 145. So not that he wouldn't do that anyway, but he's starting to say a lot of things that are kind of looking forward to next year. So I actually think he's going to stay.
What about his second interview with the Falcons?
The Falcons are believed to, are offering the job to Bill Belichick. So
that's what all the reports came out. And then 2 hours later, like they said, like Harbaugh's either meeting with them now or just got done with an interview with them like tonight.
And the last thing I saw from Florio and a bunch of other people saying that Bill Belichick's people were expecting to be offered the job. So Maybe something changes there. Maybe he goes to Atlanta. I don't know. Again,
I just wonder, like, because I'm with you. Like, I thought Bill was going to be that guy for that job. To me, that made a ton of sense. But it almost, if Bill is your guy, Bill's your guy. It's like, hey, Bill, how much money do you want to come coach us? We'll get you what you need. We want to win. We know you're that guy to help us win. Like, even as much as you love Jim, if it's between Bill and Jim, you're taking Bill every time. So,
right.
like, why even play these games to have this second interview with Jim and, go through that?
I think that the
Maybe they're not
interesting.
sold.
Well, here's the interesting thing.
I'm going under.
Jim and Bill are the two guys out of all these candidates that want the same thing. They are going to want to be head coach, have a lot of say in personnel and kind of in GM roles and stuff like that. And most teams, they are going away from that model now. Bill was kind of one of the last ones left. Andy Reid has a lot of pull still, but Bill was kind of one of the last ones left in the NFL that was still kind of acting as head coach and GM. And Harbaugh kind of wants the same. And I think that's why, I don't think anybody thought that either one of them would kind of still be floating out there right now with all the hype and, the assumption that they both want to get jobs very quickly. I've said what I've said about the Chargers for obvious reasons. I also think Harbaugh's agent is very smart in playing the game. Like if they're waiting for the Chargers offer, all right, well, we'll show them that he's still talking to Atlanta, and if they, they're creating urgency. That's all it is. Like I said, my pick is still the same. I think he ends up in Michigan. I don't think he wants the Atlanta job. I think that's a lot of smoke for no reason. I think he would take the Chargers job for the Herbert part of it. He is very big on building a team around a quarterback. Atlanta does not have that. I don't think he takes that job with the uncertainty there at that position. He has nobody on that roster that's going to be a quarterback that he's going to want. Obviously, the Justin Fields stuff is out there, but there's no guarantee that they get him. So I think it's Chargers or bust for Harbaugh in the NFL. That was my take from the get-go, and I think the other team that was kind of had an outside chance was the Raiders. And it came out last night that they're finally doing the right thing for once in their lives, and Antonio Pierce is going to be their head coach. So I think it's the Chargers, or I think it's college. So, but he is one way or the other. He is kind of the last shoe to fall. I don't think there's going to be any kind of interview process if he does leave, because I think Sean Moore's just going to get the job, and it's hard to argue against him earning it at this point. So at that point, I think it'll be there's a lot of I don't know what the right word is. There's a lot of people that are still on cloud nine for winning a championship, obviously, but I think a lot of people are. You look at a Kalen Bond or Muhammad. Those guys, those are guys that we would be in on if there wasn't uncertainty at that position. And I think they wanted to make up his mind one way or the other. So if he is going to stay, that he can schedule or try to get in late with these kids, or at least give Sean Moore a chance to talk to these kids and figure out what he wants to do with the roster going forward if it becomes his team. So I don't know exactly what the right word is, but it's starting to get a little bit uneasy from what I've read and from what I've heard from a lot of people that are still close to the program. So if something crazy happens, we'll let you know. But I think it's gonna happen pretty quickly here in the next couple of days. But let's we can segue right in to kind of just the portal and NIL in general. We'll just have a brief discussion about it, and not so much, I don't think what's right or wrong with it, because I think a lot of it, I think the intention of it is very good. I've said that from the get-go. I think the intention of giving these kids that make these schools billions of dollars, and it is a B. If they're there for 3 years and they're a star player, it's a B. They should be, rewarded for what they do. As always, and I don't mean to use this as a scapegoat, but as always, I blame the NCAA for the mess that this is, because in my opinion, it's their fault. This is not what NIL was designed to be. It was designed to have a big, huge pool of money that the NCAA overlooked and gave to the schools to disperse to the kids to make sure they didn't have to get jobs and you can't have. I don't think people realize obviously, like if you're on the football team, they have their own, like if you go to a big school, like if you go to Michigan or Ohio State, Alabama, like the football team has their own cafeteria. I don't know if people know this or not, but we'll pull the curtain back a little bit. Like they eat separately and all this other stuff. But that being said, you could be a 330-pound lineman and you can eat, after you're done lifting in the morning and after you practice. But for the rest of that day, those kids are on meal plans like everybody else that goes to that school. It's not realistic, and a lot of this was designed to give these kids money so they could go out and do things, have fun and eat and, all this other stuff and not get jobs because it's technically against the rules. What it's become is nuts. It's become pay for play. And that's because, as always, the NCAA has dropped the ball here. You now just have people, giving the program bags of money and be like, hey, spend this to get player XYZ. I don't care if the kids are getting paid. That doesn't bother me. Again, I don't think a 5-star kid coming in, get paid $75,000, who's going to potentially be the next superstar. Okay, cool. I'm fine with that. I think there should be limits. And then obviously I think it needs to be controlled because I think you're already seeing it where it's getting out of control. There's no parameters. There's nobody overseeing it. There's no supervision. So NIL, we can start there. You guys can talk about whatever you want to talk about in regards to it. On its face, I think it's a great thing. It's a great program. It's something that was talked about forever and then kind of finally came to fruition. But then when it came to fruition, it was like everybody was like hit like the launch button. And then everybody's like, all right, well, let's see what happens. And now everybody just sits back and watches it. So it's like chaos. So we can talk about that. Whatever you guys want to talk about. You can talk about that. We can talk about the portal. It's got to be open and it's got to be closed at different times. I mean, I think there's a lot of dates that got to be moved with the portal and stuff like that. But again, just give me, honest thoughts, opinions, suggestions. I know the NCAA watches the show. They have to. As much as I trash them, I'm sure it pops up on their radar.
Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, you really wants me to do because he's not sure his plan yet. He's got to piece it together
no,
still.
I can go
State
first.
man.
I can go first if you need me to.
No, it's cool, bro.
I can go first.
I got you. No, it's all right, Cottrell. It's all right, man. I got you. You just sit back, relax, and enjoy my way to fix everything, okay? Because here, honestly, I'm just playing with you. But when it comes to NIL, when it comes to the transfer portal, it's honestly a total, pardon my French, it's a total shit show. They really need to set – it's not that the dates aren't – it's not that like the time frame isn't wide enough or it's too small. They need to adjust when it opens. There is absolutely zero reason why kids should be entering the transfer portal during the season. While season's still going on, meaning like bowl season. Like you still got a bowl, you still got practices until the actual college football national championship game is played. The actual physical football season is still going. They should not be transfers during that section of time. So I think they should really push back the and I get that. I get that, in college it's different. You have recruiting trips. You have all this different stuff that kind of plays into the schedule. But unfortunately, life's not always candy and roses. You got to find some way to make it easier. And it's too tough right now for kids who are still playing, kids that had to miss out on the national like Malik Murphy, for example. He had to miss out on the chance to play for the national championship game because if he didn't, he'd be stuck in a situation right now where he's in the portal late in his ability. And all these good quarterbacks and all these good teams already have their future kind of set up. So really, for me, the big thing that needs to change is they got to get better dates. They need to set it up for after the college football playoff. I don't care if it's the day after, but change the dates so that bowl season is fun to watch again. Kids aren't opting out and transferring teams like, oh, he transferred to Alabama, but he could still play for Southern Kentucky in the bowl game. We don't know what's going on yet. Like it's just too wide open. They need to adjust the dates, and that's what I would start with personally.
And then I'll just piggyback off that because I do think that the dates are the most important thing. But for me, it's not even that reason. I think you get teams like, look at it. Two of your 4 playoff teams right now are getting their rosters absolutely demolished because, one, right now the portal is technically closed. The portal is only open for teams that either lost their head coach or just gained a new head coach. Like those are the only two like reasons why the portal is open right now. So you have kids that are hopping in the portal and everybody else is just picking them apart, trying to grab everybody that they can to take off their team. but there's nobody right now for Alabama or for Washington to replace these players with because that portal is closed right now. If Michigan is a team that loses Harbaugh this upcoming week or this weekend, everyone's going to go after some of those guys. Now, I get it. Michigan's in a little bit of a different spot because they will hire in-house, and those guys are familiar with that staff. But if you think about it like this, like if Jim Harbaugh leaves and he takes Jesse Minter with him and they bring in a new DC and, some of those guys on defense feel like they won't be great in that guy's system, and so they ultimately hit the portal, Michigan's going to be in the same spot where they're losing, 10, maybe 15 kids that were either projected starters for next year or that they actually had that were starters that won a national championship. So I think you need to find a way to keep that part of the competitive balance fair, because essentially these teams are being punished for making the playoff, and then their coaches, ultimately making their decision to either move on or, in this case, retire with Saban. You got to find a way to keep that portal open, because if you look at it like this, Michigan's, in reality, they're going to be in the absolute worst spot, because at least right now, Alabama could still go try and pluck some of those Washington players. So a lot of the guys that are leaving, they're actually following DeBoer and going to Bama to fill some of those roster spots. Bama, outside of that though, like Washington hasn't grabbed anybody because no one's leaving Bama to go to Washington. So I just think they got to find a way to make that blend happen. I don't even know what the answer for that would be. I guess, in your idea, Alex, with the portal not open until the day after the college football playoff, that way all teams are able to be there. I guess that would be a suggestion. The only thing I kind of run into an issue with, though, is that if you have some of these coaches leave or other coaches get hired, like how do you go about handling that? Because they would already be behind still in that process. But I think the transfer and the change of coaches, it being like closed for everybody, but that new coach, they got to find a way to change that because these coaches are getting picked apart.
Well, no, I mean, see, I agree with Alex's completely. I don't think the portal should even be open. I don't think you should even enter the portal until the day after. It gets rid of, it gets rid of all the speculation, or like kind of like Alex said, you have kids like, we're getting ready to watch a bowl game, and they're like, oh, so and so like put his name in the portal today, and it's. I think if you take that whole part of it away, you say, hey, national championship game is January 10th, whatever it is. January 11th, the portal opens. You want to enter the portal, you can enter the portal. You don't risk anything with coaches leaving at that point because they still can't pluck anybody until the same time everybody else does. Coaching, I mean, if you want to take another job or something like that, that has nothing to do with the portal. So I would make it, you can't enter the portal until the season's over. I think also what that does is it discourages all these kids from sitting out bowl games. Now, if you still want to opt out, you can opt out, but you're opting out now because you're going to have to opt out and either say, I'm opting out because I'm going to go play for somebody else next year, or I'm opting out to get ready for the draft. That's a completely different thing. Make the portal open the 11th, and it's open for, say, like a month. And after that, again, same thing, you close it. Because at that point, everybody's done playing. You know what you're doing for the following year. The only time that it can be changed at that point would be, like Cottrell said, if, say, February 2nd, somebody quits a job and leaves, then obviously anybody that's in that program would have the ability to enter the portal. But everybody who would want those kids is still on the same page. It's the easiest fix, which is why it won't happen, because it makes way too much sense for everybody else. It also would help the coaches because then they're not dealing with not only getting their teams ready for the college football playoff, which, again, next year is going to be a bigger deal. There's 12 teams in next year. Like this year, if you want to be really honest, the only 4 teams you really cared about were Alabama, Michigan, Texas, and Washington. So everybody was like, okay, like they have a month to get ready for their games, but like teams are off for a week. Then you have Christmas break, and then you have a week to start getting ready for the game. But in that off week, the coaches we talked about before, those coaches are off recruiting. So you give the coaches a break as well then, because next year you're gonna have college football playoff teams that are ready for getting ready for games right after the conference championship games start. There is no long layoff next year, so it makes even more sense to Regular season's over. Everything is locked. You can't get in. If you want to play with your team, play. If not, that's fine too. But you're just not going to be able to declare until January 11th or whatever the day is. That way, coaches don't have to worry about transfer portal at all. They can worry about getting ready for their games on campus. If they have to go recruit, once they get eliminated, or if they have a bye week, like whoever the top 4 is, that's fine. But you don't even have to worry about the portal. And then the only exception you have to make after you close the portal is if, like Cottrell said, if a coach goes, hey, out of nowhere, like I'm taking this NFL job, or I'm going from, so-and-so to some big program. That's fine, because then all you're doing is opening the portal for that one team. It makes it so much easier. It's chaos now. So I hope they change. I think you're going to, because I think if you listen to a lot of the coaches from big programs, they bitch more about the portal than they do NIL. I don't think anybody wants to deal with NIL, but I think the big programs have somebody who, like a specific, like designated person
for sure,
department that deals with it. So I don't think they're not sitting there on a day-to-day basis being like, yo, how much money do we have left? Like, give this kid $32,000. Give it, like, they're not doing that. I think some people think they are. They're not.
Every big time school is gonna, not even big time, every Division I school is gonna have a compliance director, and there's gonna be people underneath him that are regulating what, who's getting what, how much is getting spent here, how much is getting spent there. Like, they don't have to, these coaches and ADs, they don't have to worry about that. They have a specific department that deal with all that.
Correct. Most of them will tell you the portal is what gives them headaches. It's impossible to keep track of. And again, I think if you just make it so it only happens during one time period when all the coaches are on. That's the other thing too. This is kind of, people aren't going to look at it this way, but Cottrell brought up a good point. You can't punish Michigan, Alabama, Washington, and Texas.
We have breaking news, gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
Caleb Downs is just committed to Ohio State.
Breaking news.
I mean, Ohio State's still going to go Downs in Eugene, so it's fine.
I think you can't, like, you're then telling those 4 teams, like, hey, congratulations, you made it, but like, you can't really go after any of these kids in the portal because you don't have time to deal with it. Like, you're almost punishing the teams that are good, that have to get ready. So I think it's very, it really needs to just put everybody on the same page. And I think, honestly, it's easier for the kids too, because you've seen some kids that are like, okay, like we talked to so-and-so, but like, I do kind of want to like see what Alabama's thinking, but I got to wait 2 weeks for them to get done anyway. So like, what's the difference? Just put everybody in the portal at the same time, put all the coaches in the portal at the same time, and then go from there. It makes sense for everybody. So hopefully they change it.
Well, taking it one step further, picture this: national championship ends, the next day, the transfer portal opens, and let's just say they give 3 weeks for the transfer portal. But during those 3 weeks, nobody can talk to those kids and nobody can commit to another school, allowing every athlete to have the chance to enter the portal before negotiations, talks, and all that stuff happens. That way, you don't have situations where, like, oh, Oregon just signed Dylan Gabriel. Now our backup quarterback, Ty Thompson, is going to Tulane. Like, just give it a 3-week period where if you want to enter, you enter, but no one can vindictively enter in after the fact or someone gets signed. I think that might also kind of decrease the amount of transfers and increase competition, ultimately making teams better because their kids that weren't going to transfer initially are forced to stay there, creating quarterback competitions, wide receiver competitions, so on and so forth. But that's just another step that I personally think would increase the productivity of what the transfer portal could be. But that's kind of my last little piece.
Alex, I
agree with Alex, actually.
I agree with you in theory. I think my biggest problem, though, is you can't have these kids like being forced. And I'm not even saying forced because they still would have the opportunity to hit the portal. But you talk about like more competition. I think that's what college football is missing. Like I like seeing kids stay at a school, compete for a job. But you use Ty Thompson. I think he's a great example in this case. He was a 5-star kid that came in 2021. You bring in Dylan Gabriel. You're not bringing in Dylan Gabriel, who only has 1 year left of eligibility, to fight for a spot at quarterback. Dylan Gabriel's your starting quarterback next year. That was determined. You brought in Dante Moore. Like Dante Moore is another guy. You brought him in. This isn't a quarterback competition with Dante and Dylan. So you think of a guy like Ty Thompson. One, Dan Lanning isn't the guy who recruited him to Oregon. Two, he's going to be behind Dylan Gabriel, who's only had 1 year of eligibility, who we've already determined is going to be the starting quarterback. And then Dante Moore, a guy who you wouldn't have brought in if you didn't think that I was already better than him to be Dylan Gabriel's backup. You can't have that kid get stuck in that cycle at Oregon in those situations. That's the only part that I kind of disagree with. I do think, while I think competition is healthy for a lot of these kids, other times the reality of the situation is they're not getting a fair shake of things anyway. Because like Dylan Gabriel, if you force him to stay at Oklahoma, Oklahoma's already said, and they made it very clear, Jack Stone's a starting quarterback next year. So you'd have a guy who started 4 years of college football to literally just be a backup because of issues with the portal and things like that. So I like the idea, but I do think it'll never be perfect. We got to find a way to make sure the kids are getting taken care of that are in those unique situations.
Well, the only way that works is if coaches are 100% transparent with their players. Like, hey, portal's opening soon. Just letting you know, we think we're going to go a different direction. So I'm going to recommend that maybe you possibly look at a better situation for yourself. See, it can work 100%, but it takes 100% transparency from coaches. And as we've seen with like Kalen DeBoer, who was begging his Washington players to please understand why he went to Washington, why he went to Alabama. He did not go about that the right way, but that's for another day. 100% transparency is the only way that my plan would work, and for adding that second part. So I totally agree with what you're saying. Because I do agree that it would have sucked for Ty Thompson to be stuck in a situation as a backup again. But I do also believe that Dan Lanning, I think he was someone who was transparent and like, hey, we're looking for somebody, and if we land them, it's best for you to, kind of enter that portal and see what's out there. But that's the only way that my plan would work, because transparency has to be on the table.
I would tell you most of the time, especially at the big programs where, you have four-star or five-star quarterbacks on the roster, like they are. Like those kids usually know where they are in the pecking order. And that's why you see so many of them hit the portal early, because, the season's over. They know they're third string. They're going to be third string again next year. It's either come back there, be third string, because, the starter might be leaving, but you might have, you have another five-star kid. You have Archie Manning coming in. Like, you're behind that kid. And that's why you see a lot of those kids at the portal so early. So I would tell you most of the time, it's very rare that you hear a really, top end prospect or somebody like come out and be like, oh, I was deceived, like with where I was, like on the depth chart, or that. I would just say that is not common at all. I would tell you that most of the coaches are pretty upfront with these kids. Because again, it's reputation. You burn one kid once, and he's got 8 friends that you're recruiting the following year. Like the last thing he wants is that kid going back to those kids and be like, yo, like, so and so lies. Like this is what he told me. This is what happened. Like that's the last thing you want. So, it's we'll hope for progress. I'm sure at the end of the season next year we'll have this same exact goddamn conversation because nothing's going to change. But
they should just put us in charge. We'll figure it all out. Us three, meeting of minds, we'll fix it all.
I wish they would let me be in charge of the NCAA.
I'm not gonna lie, Alex. Right now, we really can't complain because our teams have utilized the shit out the portal so far. Bill's team hasn't had the opportunity to yet, just because they played longer than both of us, and there is uncertainty with their head coaching spot.
But you guys aren't doing anything wrong. Like I'm not mad at the Ohio State.
Oh, no.
It's the other crap that is annoying to me. I mean, like again, again, like this downs thing is again going to kind of increase it. As it will increase the uneasiness a little bit, even more so, because it's again that is a kid. There's no way with as well as Michigan's defense has played the last couple of years and as well as they've recruited. There's no way they wouldn't talk to that kid. He's also obviously probably not going to talk to them unless he knows it's going on Harbaugh, and I don't blame him. So
For sure.
It is, it's kind of getting to shit or get off the pot type thing at this point.
The other thing too that is about to be very apparent. I don't want to say this because this is going to come off as a hot take. Recruiting is going to not always come down to whatever team comes in first. So, like, for example, Bama was the team that won the recruiting battle with Caleb Downs. Ohio State actually finished up as the runner-up when he came out of high school. So that being there and just building those relationships, it's absolutely going to matter moving forward. Because again, you think about kids like, we talked about Malachi Nelson a couple weeks ago. Kids who, coaches that recruited this kid that came in second or came in third in his recruitment, he went to USC. It wasn't anything like he was expecting. He wasn't even the backup there. Coming in second and coming in third in recruiting now, like for the kids right out of high school, it's going to be so huge because ultimately we know you got to be a special talent to play as a true freshman. So that redshirt year, it might just be a situation where somebody gets groomed and they go to the team that ultimately ended up second or third or even fourth in their recruitment out of high school.
Definitely, man. Because it's kind of like you said though. Like they go campus for 1 year, and by the time their freshman year's over, the landscape's completely different. The coaches that were at that school recruiting, they could all be gone. It's there's so much it changes, and again, I think that's why and I've harped on this before. They're kids. Like, make this easier for the kids as well. Like, there's like an 18-year-old shouldn't be like have to worry about like, am I hitting the portal now and not playing with my team? Am I hitting the portal still playing? Am I hitting the portal withdrawing from school? Like, these kids shouldn't have to go through all this crap. You know what I mean? Like, and you also have to realize too, when you're in college, like you're not allowed to have an agent. So it's not like you do with the pros where like stuff goes wrong. You're like, oh crap, like your agent's kind of like your do it all fix it person. You know what I mean? Like they don't have that in college. So it's like they're calling their parents, and their parents are like, well, like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like the parent, all these parents are informed. Don't get me wrong. Like they know what's going on with their kids, but at the same time, like they don't know the ins and outs of dealing with the portal and dealing with the NCAA and all that kind of stuff either, too. So they just got to make it easier, man. It's got to make it easier. They got to make it simple. Put everybody on the same page and just make everybody's life easier. The NCAA doesn't care. It doesn't change what they do at all. Just close the portal, make it open so all the coaches, all the players are on the same page, and it makes it a lot easier. And the kids go talk to who they want to talk to. Like Cottrell said, you go back to who recruited you before, or you go a completely different direction. But it also gives the kids access to all the coaches at the same time. And they don't have that now. And that part sucks too. It's like, okay, like I decommitted or I'm leaving Bama, but like if they left Bama, just for instance, say they left Bama, say it was Caleb Downs, and they left Bama, and Ohio State was in the national championship, and like Ryan Day and all those guys, like, we're not paying attention to the portal right now. We're trying to get ready for the national championship game. Well, he might want to go to Ohio State, but like he's not going to talk to that coaching staff. And at the same time, it's like, all right, well, if I wait too long, like somebody might take my spot if I want to go to Georgia or somewhere else. So, it affects the kids that way too. It's like, all right, well, now I'm going to Georgia where I kind of really wanted to go to Ohio State, but I couldn't wait around for 2 more weeks. So it just, again, just do right by the kids and just make it simple. And I think if that's your number one goal, always to make, to simplify it and do right by the kids, I think you're going to feel it's a really easy fix to this whole system. So, but again, doing right by the student athletes, not really the NCAA's thing. So again, that's why I do not hold my breath for this for 1 second. But let's finish the show with some fun. We said we're going to do kind of, the tiers of the programs. This will get probably interesting a little bit once we get towards the bottom of tier 1, because I feel like one host is going to be puffing his chest here.
Let's find out.
Well,
there are some. There's some that are close, and there's some that are trending in certain directions, and I think there's some that are trending in other directions. So, I don't know how do we want to do this? Does anybody have a list, or are we just going to throw these out at random?
I feel like we should throw these out at random, but we can't give anybody their favorite team. Like, so I can't give Bill Michigan or I can't give Cottrell Ohio State and y'all
All right,
can't give
that's
me
fair.
Oregon because obviously we're going to choose our schools.
All right.
So I can go first if you guys want.
Go
the
for
first
it.
one for me here in either or, we're looking at Florida or Miami. Which school are you picking taking the coaching job at between Florida and Miami?
I'm going
go
Florida.
ahead.
I'm
I
going
was about to
Florida.
say, I'm also going Florida. You have one, I think Florida, obviously Florida's history of more recent success than Miami. Two, Florida plays in their own stadium called the Swamp. So I think like that's a part of it for me as well. I don't know what the hell Miami is doing. I get it. It's cool to play in the NFL stadium. Build your own damn stadium. Like turn that into like a home crowd where people are scared to go play there or intimidated to go play there. No one's intimidated to go play at Hard Rock. Like it's kind of cool to go play there, but they're never selling it out. It's never crazy in there. They don't have, the crowd that has a special name. Like for me, it's Florida.
I agree. I think with the history there and and kind of like the legacy, obviously the Ben Griffin Stadium, Swamp. It's one of the most intimidating places to go play. I think they have better resources, and I think that the big thing for me is what Cottrell touched on there. I think they have a way better fan base. So you go to Florida and win, and you're in a better conference in the SEC. You go to Florida and win. We all grew up. I did. Every year was you watch Florida State, and those games were just absolute madness. When Florida's one of those teams that kind of needs to rebound and turn around, but they're one of those teams when they are good, it is better for college football.
All right, so you talk about Florida State. I'll throw one out there. Florida State or Texas A&M?
This is easy for me right now. I'm going Florida State. I think you have to give Mike Norvell credit for what he's done. Again, you go from 1990 to 2002. Florida State was the job. And he's turned that program around and getting back to that again. If you're an A&M fan, you listen to this. I'm sorry. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. They've never been more than third fiddle in that division, and people don't want to hear that. And I'm just telling you, it's the truth, though. They had their decent run in the Big 12 for a while, but then Oklahoma just kind of really took that conference over in the late 90s, never looked back, and then you threw Texas in. A&M was good once in a while. And you're going to SEC, you're in the SEC West, you're never going to be top dog there. You're not. You're always going to – I don't care how much money you have and whatever you want to do. You're not – I mean, we'll see what happens with Bama, but there's always Bama, there's always LSU. Now you got Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, who's a younger coach. It's Florida State for me. Alex is frozen.
I was wondering, is he going to say anything? But for me, I actually disagree with you, Bill. I like the Texas A&M job. Look, you get College Station. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that Florida State has bad facilities or anything like that. It's great to go play at Florida State. But for me, College Station is a hell of a place to go play. Your boosters are going to give you as much money as you need. If I'm a head coach and I'm confident in my ability, if I know, hey, I'm not just bringing in 5-star kids and I can't coach them. That's the Jimbo Fisher way. I'm not just buying kids just because I can. If you give me essentially unlimited amount of resources to bring in my guys, there's no reason why a team with Walter Nolan and Evan Stewart never competed seriously for the SEC at all. For me, that's absolutely insane. So I like the A&M job more just because I know what's going to come with it on the back end.
I get it.
Are you guys still on Florida State A&M?
Yeah, so you can hop in here. Go ahead. Cottrell just answered.
Perfect. So if we're looking at how the landscape currently is, yes, that's my bad. My hotspot was going in and out. It's the ice and the weather and stuff. Anyway, with how the landscape currently is, I'm looking at the Texas A&M job all day. Florida State just went undefeated and wasn't even included in college football playoff. If I'm an athlete who wants to go play for a college football national championship, and this team just went undefeated and couldn't go, why the hell would I go there? Texas A&M is constantly in the news. Texas A&M is in one of the best hotbeds for recruiting in the country. And even coming off a 7-6 season, they're top 5 in the transfer portal. I think they've gotten 22 transfers already in this offseason. When Texas A&M is cleaning up, they got the best area for recruiting. And like I said, if they went 13-0, you're damn well bet they're going to be in the college football playoff. So I honestly, it's just for me, it's a no-brainer. If this was late 90s, I would say Florida State. But today's landscape, Texas A&M all day.
It's kind of my point. They're never going to go 13-0 because they're
But
not.
that's not. No.
It is.
That's not the point, though, Bill. If you're the coach of that program, or if you're a great coach, like, who would you rather go to?
Right now, I'd rather go to Florida State. I feel like my chances, minus the corrupt college football playoff committee of this year, my chances to compete for a national championship are better right now to go to Florida State and run the ACC than it is to go to the SEC and deal with the other 8 or 9 schools. You might get that one class that wins it, like, they'll be like, oh, like if Walter Nolan and all those guys would have stayed another year. You might have that one magical run next year. You're not going to sustain that, though. You're not going to sustain that with LSU and Alabama and Ole Miss, and if Florida comes back, Tennessee, Georgia, you're just not. I can go to the ACC where Dabo's about to leave Clemson, and I got Mike Norvell, who's killed everybody in the transfer portal with all those guys coming in, and I'm just going to go run the ACC for 10 years and take my luck in the college football playoff every year and see what happens. Because I know I'm going to be there every year.
I get what you're saying. I think you look at the recruiting classes, and I know, recruiting classes don't win national championships per se. Nope. By any stretch of the imagination. But knowing that, and I'm not saying Jimbo's a bad recruiter. Like, Jimbo's obviously great at recruiting, especially when they
a horrible coach.
When they can throw the money at him. If Texas A&M can consistently be in those top 5, top 3 classes year in and year out, and you actually put a good coach there, the sky is the limit for them. I think they could be I don't want to go completely blasphemous here, but I think they could literally be what you're seeing Georgia become. Georgia didn't have this crazy rich history of just being this dominant SEC school, but Kirby got there. He brought in those guys. He can coach his ass off. And now we're looking at Georgia as one of those clear-cut powerhouses of college football.
Georgia used to be, though. Georgia used to be really good. They had those down like 15 years. And Georgia 5 years ago was exactly where, up until this past year, Florida State was, and kind of where Florida is again, and like where Tennessee's trying to like get back out of. Like they were always good. They were great. I'm just saying, like Georgia, like the Georgia program has a lot of history, but that's all right, man. We disagree on that one. That's fine. I guess it's my turn. I got to come up with one. So I can't use Oregon. I can't use Ohio State.
Well, you can't. You just can't use. You can use everybody, but Oregon, Ohio State.
Yeah. You good? You good?
Yep, I'm good. It's early, man. It's early. I'm tired.
Let's go. Let's go. Penn State and Notre Dame.
Oh, I was going to go Notre Dame on my next one, too. That's a good one.
I would go to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is – when I think about, like, this, I think Notre Dame can be a forever job for a coach. If you have success in Notre Dame, you could stay there for your entire career and not ever feel like you're going to another school to move up. At Penn State, no matter how much success you have – and I know Joe Pa is the one exception here because he was there forever and he consistently won. But even knowing that, the way Penn State is right now, even with all that history, that's not a forever job, I don't think, for anybody. And I'm not saying that it's a stepping stone job, but if you're the Penn State head coach and let's say Ohio State or Michigan or even Texas. Like if those teams call, you're entertaining that phone call. If you're having continuous success at Notre Dame, you're building that legacy there. Clearly, you love that culture, like the Catholic culture there. That's a school that you end up staying at forever. So I'm going with Notre Dame.
All right, so Penn State, Notre Dame. For me, I definitely have to think I choose Notre Dame as well. Strictly for the fact of the rich heritage. I would change my name to Rudy, and I'd be Coach Rudy if you want me to be. But I'm all about the Fighting Irish. Like I say Penn State. Honestly, they have a history, but when I think of Penn State and the history they have, it's not a good history. The Pac-12 and the West Coasters, when we think of Penn State, we do not think of championships and Big Ten titles. We think of Joe Paterno and the scandal. That's kind of what we think of. So for me, I kind of want to distance myself from that as far as possible. So Notre Dame is the easy pick for me on this one also.
All right.
So okay, here we go. Here's a fun one. So obviously, I'm not participating in this one, so this would be a good one.
You might as well. I participated. So when it was my go, right?
What?
Well, it's because Alex left.
Yeah, that's true. Show must go on.
That's true. Oregon, Oklahoma.
This one's easy for me.
Yeah, it's Oregon. It's easy.
It's Oregon.
I think Oregon has.
Oregon.
I think with Oregon as they are right now, it's funny because we talked about it in the chat. For me, I thought Oregon was a fringe top 10 program in all of college football. And I think Dan Lanning's commitment there is turning that job slowly into a bona fide top 10 program in the country. I think that's going to be one of those destinations where if Dan Lanning starts to have success in the future, I think that could potentially be a forever job for him if the Georgia job, doesn't open up. If Kirby Smart says, I'm going to be in Athens for the next 15 years, I think you could see Dan Lanning stay at Oregon for, 15, 20 years just because he's young enough to do it. And at that point, if he's at a program for 20, 25 years, he's not leaving that program. And I think for Oregon, they have all the resources in the world. They got in my opinion, the best uniforms in the country because they can come up with whatever they want to.
Say which ones. They change every week.
Exactly. So I'd roll with Oregon there. There's only a handful of teams that I take over Oregon.
This is I would say, I agree. I think if they're not like 10, they're probably like 11 or 12, somewhere right around there. But here's the big thing for me. These two programs are headed in different trajectories. Oregon is on the rise. They have a really good young head coach in Dan Lanning, and they're going to the Big Ten. That program is going to continue to get better. Oklahoma, I like Brett Venables. I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a nice coach. Brett Venables is about to go get stuck in the middle tier of the SEC every year. Again, if you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan, sorry. That's just the reality of this situation. You're not going to compete with the Texases and the Bamas and the Georgias and all them. You're not. You guys took the money. I get it. You took the money to go to the SEC. But everybody forgets they made that agreement when they still thought Lincoln Riley was going to be their head coach. He's not anymore. They're gonna be. I'm telling you, man. That's an easy one for me. Oklahoma is going to be a mid-pack SEC team every year. That's what they're going to be. I'll take Oregon, who, I'm not saying Oregon's going to win the Big Ten championship every year, but they're going to be competitive. They're going to be the thick of things every year. I'll tell you that much. They're not going to be. I don't see too many years where Oregon's going to be like. I'm not going to see Oregon going, 6-6 in the conference. That's not going to happen. And I think Oklahoma's going to do that. So I go Oregon for sure.
All right. So we got a little fun one here because they played each other last season. How about Colorado or UCLA?
That's an easy one for me. I got to go UCLA, strictly playing in the Rose Bowl, the baby blue colors. And you also got, like I said, they do have a history. Chip Kelly's been able to has shown what the potential is of the recruiting at UCLA. Obviously, last season didn't end up quite exactly how he was showing, but the defensive recruiting is there. Being in Southern California, you do have USC to constantly compete with. However, the melting pot that you have surrounding you and the many areas of the caveats that you can easily recruit top tier players. And plus, everyone wants to end up in California. Everyone wants to end up in LA. And you have the chance to turn UCLA into what USC is currently, where all the big names want to go to USC. And you can make that happen at UCLA with a little bit of success and some hard work. I think UCLA could be one of those programs that, with the right person at the helm, could be a top tier program. In Colorado, you're still going to Colorado, and the only thing people think about with Colorado is smoking weed. So when it comes to being in Boulder, I'd rather be in sunny sunshines in UCLA, Southern California all day of the week.
This is a lot closer for me. I'm not going to dismiss Colorado quite like Alex did. Colorado A is a gorgeous campus. It's a gorgeous area. Again, you're a young buck, so I'm going to excuse you, but you. I don't even mean that to be funny. I'm just telling you, like this kind of goes back to like in the '90s, Colorado was a top 5 program. Back in my day, they were a top 5 program. Back in the Cordell Stewart, Eric Bieniemy was an absolute stud. That program, that was kind of why a lot of people were very excited when Deion went there. Like that was a very good storied program back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And he's kind of revived it. I agree with you on everything else. Obviously, playing in the Rose Bowl 7 times a year is an absolute blessing. You have the great weather, the recruiting. Problem kind of is you do play second fiddle to USC. It's just a hazard of the job. I'm gonna go UCLA strictly because again I don't even know, like, if I'm taking the Colorado job, like what is the Big 12 really going to look like in like 3 or 4 years from now? Whereas if you're UCLA, you have a lot of work to do, and you kind of have your work cut out for you to keep up with the big guns of the Big 10. But that being said, you're still in the Big 10, which is debatably the best conference in the country. So I think UCLA is the better job slightly. So I would go UCLA.
The last time Colorado was relevant was 2002. You know what happened in 2002? They went up against the Oregon Ducks in the Fiesta Bowl and got destroyed 38-16. So yes, I do remember Colorado quite fondly, and that's my memory.
I will say this, like, minus the last couple of years when Oregon's been really good, every other like high point of Oregon Duck history has been highlighted on this show in the first.
The funniest
4.5 months we've done this.
The funniest part about everything, though, is that if you look back at the most important games in Oregon's history, they've lost damn near all of them. You talk about the national championship game against Auburn, the national championship game against Ohio State. Other years when the Dennis Dixon days, they just even Jeremiah Masoli, like those guys just could never get over the hump to win a national championship. No, I'm sure Alex is somewhere pissed if he's still listening right now. We're slandering these Ducks here, but it's just the reality of the situation.
I just remember the year they played Penn State in the Rose Bowl. I remember it was literally the first play from scrimmage. Kajana Carter went like 80 yards, and Penn State just routed Oregon. But yeah, neither here nor there. I'm a really good one, so I hope he comes back.
All right, we'll fill him in. What is it? Let's go.
I'm going to go Tennessee. Like 2 storied programs that I think are not. I don't think not where anybody pictured they would be right now. So I will go Tennessee and USC.
USC for me, and that's relatively easy. I say that because I think USC is a football school. Not saying that Tennessee isn't a football school. I think they do love their football, but I do think with as much success as they've had in basketball, I do think that takes away a bit, from the luster at Tennessee. I think also with USC, them being in Los Angeles, you guys talked about UCLA and all those factors there. It's going to be the same thing with USC. So I think USC is in a spot too where they're always given as much money as they need to go out and get these recruits, especially in today's game with NIL being where it's at. But I love USC. I love the tradition there. I think it's also very interesting still that they're one of the only college football programs that kids will not have their last names on the back of their jerseys. Like in a weird way, I kind of do like it. It's like an old school thing that I'm kind of still digging. But I'd go USC. And Alex, I know you're late to the party here, but the question was USC or Tennessee.
I'm gonna give him a second to think. The only part I'm gonna dispute with what you said. I think you're horribly underselling that Tennessee's a football school. I would actually dare say their fan base is better than USC's. That stadium is sold out every game they play at home.
Better home environment for sure, no doubt about that. Yeah,
they have diehard fans. I know USC plays in the Coliseum and everything. That's cool, but like, there's games you turn like when Tennessee plays, Southwest Missouri State in week 1, there's 105,000 people in that stadium. When USC plays,
Arizona,
Joe Schmo, California State week 1, that place is not full. So I would absolutely say Tennessee's fan base is I think Tennessee by far has a better fan base.
I agree.
What's a better job? It's probably USC though, but I think it's close. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly a really tough one because you got USC, you got the history there, you got the melting pot I was just talking about that UCLA has. And USC, honestly, when it comes to recruiting, pretty much owns Southern California, which has a lot of top-tier talent coming out of there. Tennessee, though, Tennessee has also really rich history. You got the NFL greats that went there, Peyton Manning, to mention one. If I'm thinking about a team that I would rather take over as a head coach of, for me, it's hard to ignore all the years of USC being successful in the Pac-10 at the time, all the Pac-10 championships, beating my Oregon Ducks, and playing for the national titles. Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Carson Palmer, all those guys. For me, I would definitely think I would have to go Tennessee. Tennessee just really comes out to me as a city of the future. For me, New York, LA, cities like that, people are going to stop going there just to be different. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's going out there because that's what, like, kind of like the gold rush. Everyone's running for the next big thing. I think slowly but surely, especially with NIL, I think those schools like Tennessee really have what it takes to kind of lure those kids away from those typical powerhouse schools. I think Tennessee would be where I would go and like want to set my roots down if I was choosing out of those two positions.
Do you know what city Tennessee is in?
What?
Do you know what city
Come on.
University of Tennessee is in?
Give it to us.
It's in Knoxville.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Do I know where Tennessee's at? Yes, I know where Tennessee's at. Knoxville, baby.
You referred to Tennessee as a city 45 seconds ago. That's why I was asking.
I'm flustered. My internet's going in and out. I'm trying to catch up over here. All right, I'm doing what I can.
All right. Well, does anybody have another good one? If not, we can end the show here. I don't know.
No, I think that was pretty much all the good ones that I had. Next year, what we should do is we should get a hat, and we should just take 2 teams out, and we can do it that way next year.
All right, something we can work on. We'll talk to financial and see if we have that in the budget. I'm not quite sure yet.
I got one more for you, but it's not necessarily program; it's field.
Okay.
Let's go Eastern Michigan in the gray surface. Or
if you're going the
nope, I'm not going Smurf turf because I know that's everybody's favorite answer.
Yeah, I say Smurf turf wins. They were the first ones to do it too.
I gotta go with the teal at Coastal Carolina.
All right, so I've been in Eastern Michigan Stadium numerous times when they still had green turf. Here's my problem. Here's my problem with Coastal. The teal looks great at like the beginning of the season when it's all like nice and dry and like painted and fresh. The teal doesn't hold up as well as the gray. By the end of the year, it's dirty. Man, I'm you know what? I'm going with my gut. I'm going Eastern Michigan. I'm going with the Gray Turf. I'm going with the Eagles.
So the question was the Gray Turf or the Boise State Blue Turf? Is that what we're choosing between?
Coastal Carolina's
Coastal
Steel
Carolina.
Turf.
Okay. I love Coastal Carolina. I love everything about that school. I love their the school mascot. I love the team. I got to go with Coastal Carolina for sure. I actually haven't even seen what shade is their field. You said
It's teal.
It's a teal. Yeah, see, I love that. I would have to go. I would have to go Coastal Carolina all day.
I'm actually in agreement here with Bill. I think the gray looks sweet, especially for the night games at Eastern Michigan. You don't get them often, but Eastern Michigan is a MAC school, and sometimes they play on Tuesday night. So if you catch a Eastern Michigan home game on a Tuesday night, the field looks absolutely sweet. Sometimes there's like some fog that comes off of it just because of how the weather is out there. It just gives it a really cool aura. And, I do agree with Bill. I think it just holds up a little bit better. And it looks great all season.
Definitely looks better on TV. Keeping it close to Ypsilanti is literally the next exit down from Ann Arbor, too. So, doesn't somebody have black turf now or red turf?
Red turf is at Eastern Washington, their FCS school.
That's right. But didn't somebody get black turf like 2 years ago, and then like they changed it already because people were like, in the summer, this is going to be 190 degrees on the turf. I swore somebody went to black turf.
I wouldn't be surprised, but that is an awful idea.
All right. I swore somebody did it. Maybe not, but I thought they did. But that is it, gentlemen. We are going to go on our winter break here. End of the mid-season finale, shall you call it, if this was a network show. Any final thoughts? Any final predictions, crazy things you want to get out, that could come true between now and when we come back on the air?
I was going to let Alex go.
I don't
see if he had anything.
Look, I'm here. Okay, I'm bouncing in and out, but I'm here. Damn it, we're gonna finish the show off with me on it. All right, and I got something important to say, and that's come back for season 2 because this shit's gonna be awesome next year. It's already been awesome this year. It's been a great experience. Look forward to some new stuff that's coming out. If I have to give it any sneak peeks, keep an eye on Wire's page.
Careful.
I said keep an eye and we'll see what happens. That's all I'm going to say. I wasn't going to reveal nothing. Don't worry.
Yeah,
but now Bill's
we're not there yet.
We're not close.
Oh, we got an echo now.
I can't help it, man. I can't help it. My stuff's all messed up. I'm so glad we're wrapping this up because I could not do a whole episode like this.
We will make sure we get Alex better equipment before we come back on the air in season 2.
I got great equipment, just malfunctioning right now.
Cottrell, my man, what do you got?
I don't have any crazy predictions before we come back on. I will be interested to see how some of these kids look, once we get to the combine, because at this point, outside of the few kids left at Alabama and at Washington, we're pretty much wrapping up the portal. Julian Sands, obviously still the big name to fall. Caden Proctor, the left tackle from Bama, is another big name. And then, of course, Jim Harbaugh, if he ends up leaving or staying. If he stays, I don't think you really get, any Michigan kids in the portal. Well, you won't, because they won't be allowed to be in the portal because their coach is back. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of shift my focus to some of these kids that we've seen play for the last 3 to 4 years and seeing where they could potentially be good fits at.
I agree. I mean, obviously, it's been kind of a hot topic for a while now, but I think what Harbaugh ends up, finally deciding to do, I think is one of the biggest storylines. There are a couple of kids out there left, obviously, that are really talented kids that need to be signed out of the portal. So I'm looking forward to all that. And obviously, once spring practice starts, and we come back in April, we'll be able to, kind of dab in both of those type things. So that being said, though, I was busting Alex's balls, but, there are some potentially really big things coming up. So if you follow this show, if you follow Wire to Wire, if you follow any of the other shows that that Gene co-hosts, you probably should stay tuned. Potentially some big stuff coming out of there. We obviously will be back. This will be the trio that will be back. Gentlemen, I want to thank both of you personally for all your effort, your time, for both just being absolute kick-ass co-hosts. I've said it before, doing this with both of you, this makes my job very easy, hosting this show. So I couldn't do it without either one of you. So honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank both of you. Alex is driving me freaking crazy right now up in the other corner. But
I can't stop fidgeting, man.
Bro, oh my god. You're like,
Niners game is on in like 8 hours. Okay, I can't contain myself.
You've nothing to worry about in that football game. Relax.
It's like Oregon versus Liberty.
Yeah, like
You're
honestly,
good. I promise.
You're fine. But genuinely, thank both of you guys. This has been a blast. I've had so much fun doing it. I am looking forward to season 2, and kind of like Alex said, we are already talking about what season 2 is going to be like, what we want to change, what we want to improve. All the people that are in the chat, every Saturday, Justin Louder, Gene pops in there when he can. A lot of the other guys that have kind of started listening towards the end. Thank you guys for your continued support. It does mean the world to us. So hopefully, that continues next year as well. I think it's about it. It's been fun. I love it. I love this show. I love what we started. Like I said, I think we're going to keep continuing to improve, and the show will keep getting better, and we'll go from there. We love doing it. So
the only other thing that I would want to add to that Bill is obviously, Bill already mentioned it. We appreciate the hell out of you guys, tuning in every Saturday morning before the game started. And I know the season's over now, but we are focused very much on how we can improve the show and, how we can really just take it to that next level in season 2. So if there's anything specifically that you guys would want to see, or like other parts of college football that you guys want us to cover, I'm sure we'd be open to figuring out a way to even potentially making that work as well. So we're always, open to the new ideas. We found a lot of stuff that worked for us this year, but of course, if we could add something, fun to this, obviously the Eliminator, that's going to be our thing for forever. But if we can add more fun stuff like that, we'd love to do it every single Saturday, keep everybody engaged and locked in.
Agreed. And any constructive feedback for any time when you do anything creative like this is always welcome. And it should be if people really want to improve their show. So we want to, I look at like me and Cottrell are, what were we, like 175, something like that, deep with Wire to Wire. And we're still, coming up with things to do differently than we did them the last time around. They're trying to make them better. So this show is going to continue to grow, and I hope it does. Because again, I really do enjoy the hell out of both you guys and enjoying the show with you. So that is it for now. A little bit of a sad goodbye, but it's not really goodbye. It's more of a see you later. We will be back. And again, if anything crazy happens between now and then, we're always available to hop on here and do a special. So, gentlemen, stay warm. Alex, I hope you pray to God you fix your internet.
It's working great now. It's like, oh, sweet.
I guess we can officially now say that everybody on this show is a member of the Big Ten, and that should make next year very interesting. So, we will be back with that dynamic next year. So, gentlemen, thank you. We will see you later. See everybody soon. Peace out.